Welcome to Business Unmuted, a business discussion programme for the north of England, which is also available as a good podcast on various podcast sites. The programme is brought to you in association with Virtue BMW, part of Gateshead-based Virtue Motors plc. If you're in the market for a new, used or fleet vehicle, its dealerships are in Stockton, Durham, Sunderland, Malton or York. Now, according to a closely watched Purchasing Managers Index, S&P Global, output in hospitality, retail and other services rose last month to its highest level in 10 months, despite confidence among other businesses waning. The index rose for a third consecutive month to reach what they call 62.6, which is up from exceeding the 50 mark, which means it's more growth than contraction. It's good, in other words. The industries covered in the index are some of those that have been hit hardest by the pandemic, and the recruitment for those industries has been an issue over the last 2 years. The UK still has a record number of vacancies, about 1.3 million unfilled jobs, but our unemployment rate has fallen too, to 3.9%, with employment rate of people in jobs of 75.6%. Now, my guests to talk about the general economy and their businesses today are Sarah Ellerby, Chief Executive of Nova Pangaea Technologies, Alistair McLeod, Chief Executive of Grey Fox Consulting, and down the line we've got Sim Hall, Managing Director of Populus Select, who are recruitment specialists, which are appropriate given the recruitment issues. Let's start with you, Sarah. A very warm welcome. Now,
thank you.
You've got a fantastic new business in Teesside, and the business is a technology, environmental business. Tell us all about it. What is it you're doing?
So what we do is Nova Pangaea has developed a process technology called RefNova. RefNova takes woody and agricultural plant residues, converts those into sustainable sugars and biocarbons. The sugars are then fermented to bioethanol, further downstream to sustainable aviation fuel. The biocarbons actually replace coal and coke within the steel industry to create green steel. Actually, this part of our process is carbon neutral, and it can also be used as a carbon capture and a sequestration. So it's quite an interest right in the centre of net zero and decarbonisation.
Absolutely, and it seems to be that you're, as you say, in the centre, but really early on in the chain of technology that's needed to decarbonise. So where did all the technology and the ideas and the science for this come from? How have you brought it together?
This has been in the mix for some time now, way back to the 1960s, and it actually came out of the Latvia Wood Institute. Wow. Where two founders, an Irish founder as well as an Australian founder, came together to basically bring this technology to market. I've been in the business for just over 2.5 years. At the time when I joined, when we'd just completed construction of the demonstration unit at Wilton International, and now we're at a phase where we are moving into a sort of commercialisation, internationalisation of the business.
Now, for those people watching or listening to this outside of the Tees Valley area, the Wilton Centre is like the biggest chemistry set in Europe, really, isn't it? It's a vast area where the UK's chemistry industry has been located. And I suppose that is a great place to build a proving plant. And that, as I understand, is what this is, a sort of proving plant for the technology.
It is. It's we've RefNova is a very interesting process. It's 2 phases. We've run over 1,000 hours on the front end, which is Nova Pre, and on the back end of RefNova, which is our steam assisted rapid pyrolysis, we've run over 500 hours. So it's a 5,000 ton output pre-commercial scale plant. We are looking to scale that out into commercial production next year, much larger volumes, around about 6 million litres of bioethanol and 10,000 tonnes of biocarbon. So both of very much in the sort of decarbonisation of transportation and industrial sectors.
So to go from 5,000 to, what was it you said, 6 million?
Well, 20,000 output, so
right.
it equates to around about 6 million litres of ethanol.
So very, very significant numbers. To go from those numbers to the much more significant numbers, will it need an entire new plant to be constructed, or will it
No, we're actually scaling out. So we've got our proof points, we're optimising the plant currently, and we're actually scaling out, not up, scaling out. So in order to accelerate commercialisation, and to get our first plant built, which hopefully will be on Teesside. This is a way, we've already got some of the equipment, so we are currently in a financing round to basically obviously realise that sort of commercial availability of our products next year.
I wouldn't be so rude as to ask you about how your finance round's going, but I just wonder, what is the key thing that you're saying to people who you might want to invest about the north of England and what you're doing here? What levers are you pulling to tug at their investment instincts?
Well, we enable decarbonisation. So our products is a precursor to sustainable aviation fuel, which is one of our largest markets. We are partnered with British Airways and LanzaJet to deliver 113 million litres of sustainable aviation fuel. That's 12 RefNova plants in the UK. We're right in an industrial hub, where we require lots of skills and workforce, specialised workforce, engineering, process operators within this region. So it's quite desirable. But from an investment perspective, we are looking internationally. We have struggled. We are a capital-intensive business. The next phase of our scale-up requires not just 1 or 2 million; it requires tens of millions in order to get plants on the ground. So we are actually looking at sort of bringing in capital internationally, which is disappointing actually for the UK, because there is a gap in the ecosystem of funding for scale-up businesses like Nova Pangaea.
Well, I hope it's sorted, and I hope that Tees Valley will help you make the case, because it sounds like exactly the kind of thing that's needed in the north of England. It's part of the levelling up agenda, I suppose, to get this kind of facility up and running. By the way, just before we move on to Alistair and the other people, you have worked all over the world, and have you returned home to Teesside, or have you decided to come home to the north, or was it always your...
So I've worked internationally. I've worked in the US for 18 years across various industries, quite oil and gas, industrial, natural resources. It was just time to come home. I was born and bred in Yorkshire, so this is obviously very close to my heart. But it was just time. There was a lot of activity, energy companies popping up. It seemed like the UK was on the forefront of decarbonisation, but I think again there's a gap in that market of finance, and I found that to be quite disappointing.
I ask you the question because this is a personal opinion. I'm going to try and do something about it as well, but with campaigning, and that is about the diaspora of people who the north of England has sent around the world. You are a good example of that, and we now have many more vacancies available. In fact, I'll flash a slide up from the Daily Mail that shows vacancies are up around 80% in the north compared to other parts of the country where they're growing, but they're not growing that much. And Sim Hall on the recruitment side, and I probably believe, don't we need to attract people like Sarah back. She's a shining example, Sim.
Absolutely, to bring in a talent like Sarah back to the region is incredible. Sarah, uncharacteristically, has been quite modest with what she's talking about. This is a world-class technology. We're not just net zero centre in Teesside for the UK, but what Sarah's doing and other similar businesses are making us the global centre for net zero. This is a industrial revolution that we're getting here, and you're driving that. So to bring the talent that Sarah's got also attracts that the rest of that talent to come in behind it. So yeah, absolutely.
And we'll talk about the diaspora properly in a few minutes. I mean, my own firm wants to get people in and get them, if necessary, if they're not here because they've left. My own daughter left to go and work in America, and I'd like the young people of talent to consider working for people like me, people like you, and look at the north again. Let's bring Alistair in. Now, you're running a new business, aren't you? It's in IT, and you're doing work for small businesses and large.
Yeah.
Tell us what the product is that you're offering people.
So we're boutique consultancy based in the centre of Newcastle, although we do work nationally. We've got clients of various sizes in that SME sort of spectrum. The key thing that we provide is the strategic IT consultancy viewpoint that an SME not necessarily has. They might have some internal IT staff. They might have a provider who's providing them with some some reactive support. We come in and provide that IT director level strategic perspective, help them understand, how they can actually really push their business on using technology, and how they can and what that investment plan needs to look like in terms of digital.
And also perhaps to refresh what is being done in the digital space as well, because a lot of businesses, and my own business has been going quite, my business is 34 years old. It needs a bit of a refresh every so often. What accountancy software are you using? What customer relationship software are you using? How do they link?
Absolutely, and I mean we talk about digital transformation on two axes. We talk about how you use it to accelerate the experiences and services you provide to your customers, and we talk about how you use it to accelerate and become much more efficient in the way that you work. And what we often find is organisations that have been around a bit longer have adopted the technology, but it's not that well aligned. They're trying to scale up, but they realise that the data and the information that they've got in their business isn't really cutting it. And what we do is we come in and sort of look at how that can be sort of streamlined, and how those systems can talk to each other, what systems they might need to bring in, how they can get more out of their data. Because at the end of the day, it's all about data. It's about driving business decisions, driving insight through data.
I suppose the digital infrastructure of your business will be as fundamental as the actual plant, won't
I
it?
was just going to say, I was going to get his card there. That's exactly what we're looking at. It's just a new era of doing business, working through a pandemic. Everything is sort of online. There's hybrid, working as a hybrid system. You've got to be able to leverage digitisation. You've got to be able to leverage industrial IoT, and that goes to making sure that your workforce is, you're upskilling your workforce and reinvesting back into people and in your workforce to ensure that they're fit for purpose moving forward. IT skills I find, in this industry are lacking, and so we've got to actually bring people up for the next phase of the business.
I see that as well, and I know in my own workforce that everyone we like to think is really on it, but actually sometimes it can be a little intimidating. People have got their own core skill, but in order to implement their core skill, they need to have the ability to get into the digital space with confidence. And is that something you can help businesses with in terms of interacting with the workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just on that point about people upskilling and finding it easy, I think there's two sides to that. There's one, that the investment that companies need to make, and it's emphasis on the board of directors there to really put that investment into the training and upskilling of people within their own organisations. It's easy to play victim, isn't it, and say there's not enough digital skills around, but actually organisations need to take responsibility for that. But the second side of that is then to put in place IT systems that actually create value and are easy to use. One of the things that we talk about a lot in the work that we do is getting that balance between having a system there that is actually useful versus the admin burden that it might actually create. How you get data into the system and how you get data out. And there's got to be a real focus on making sure that is as seamless and easy to do as possible for the end user, so they can actually get on and do their job, and it's the data that's just informing their day-to-day work.
And having a consultant like you come in, I suppose, is also a help of not letting the IT companies drive the change, because you regularly have software updates, or companies that we want to do it this way, we want to add a video link, now sometimes that will be entirely appropriate, but it's obviously driven for the purpose of generating profits for IT companies.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I think make us unique is that my early career was in a technical role, so I know exactly what it's like to get excited about technology and get sort of very enthusiastic about it. But the second half of my career was as a director of a large consultancy company. We grew that business to 200 people, and so I've got the businessman's hat on as well, and I understand the challenges that the board of directors have in terms of making sure that they make the right investments and they're using technology appropriately.
Now you're also going all around the country as well, which is great, because you've got clients everywhere, and that's good. You've got a good start. How long have you been in business now?
We've been going for 2.5 years now, nearly.
Great. So you're still in starter
Yeah,
stage.
well, the pandemic had a big impact on that. Obviously, we set up 3 months before the pandemic hit, which knocked our business plans back a little bit. But since the first lockdown, people have really embraced the use of technology. They've seen how it can actually enable their businesses to continue to function in the face of adversity, and we're engaged with lots of organisations who now want to make those those sort of choices they made in the pandemic much more concrete and scalable.
Yes, and also to make sure, because I mean, in my own business, I freely admit that, you know, in the first few months of that lockdown, we sort of bolted this onto that, and we got a bit patched that there, and just made it work. And we come back into the office, everyone's really enjoying being back in the office, the creative environment's buzzing again, but suddenly it creaks at the seams a bit.
It does, yeah, exactly.
All right, let's move to Sim. Now, Sim, you've been recruiting at pace in the last few months at your Populus Select Recruitment Consultancy. Nice to see you were working with Sarah at Nova Pangaea, but tell us where you see the growth in recruitment vacancies the most in terms of your own field.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're seeing it right across the board, Graham. You know, we do have this need for the higher levels where we work, the professional search and the exec search, and that is a challenge. You know, you talked about the unprecedented level of vacancies, not only in the country but in the region, which are growing at a frightening rate. But we still in the northeast have the highest unemployment rate, so there is a disconnect there, which, you know, it tells a story about the levels of vacancies and where those vacancies lie, with the specialists, with the scientists and the engineering staff that I know that they're required for businesses like Sarah's, like Nova Pangaea. But that's where we come in, that's where we really tackle it. But then we're also looking at what's happening with these large anchor projects that are going on with the likes of the BPs, the net zero. There's going to be around 3,000 construction workers going to be required in the northeast. So, you know, there's a huge amount of requirement across Teesside, across the northeast.
It's a bit like Alvida saying pet in reverse. When I was a young guy, first got into my career, that TV show was a big TV show. Geordie Brickies going to Germany because they couldn't get jobs. Now it's the opposite. We want them back.
Yeah. Well, I remember they did come back actually, Graham, if you remember. And I think the second, third series, they took the transporter bridge to bits, but hopefully they're not doing that.
That's right.
But you know, I mean, across Teesside we're seeing this, but we work internationally. 40% of our turnover is actually export, and we're working across a number of different regions, Europe and into the US. And we're seeing the same picture over there. So it is a challenge.
Now, Sim, you and I were at a business event last week. There was 100 businesses in the audience, so it was a representative sample, and I had the pleasure of chairing it. And I asked 3 questions. The first question I asked is, put your hand up if your business will turn over more money this year, and about 90% of the people put their hand up. Then I asked them to put their hand up if they would make more profits this year than last year, and about 75%, but a clear majority put their hand up. And then I asked them to put their hand up if they were trying to recruit people, and every single person put their hand up. Now, the problem is, as you've said, in specialist areas, but there's also in non-specialist work, the newspapers are running this phrase, the great lie down, where people have not come back to work, and you've got baggage handlers at Heathrow, problems recruiting people to do security at Manchester Airport, which have been high profile this week as people have been going on Easter getaways. Can I ask a hard-edged question of everyone? And I don't mean to propose this. I'm not a politician. And my days in politics are well and truly over. But if we've got 1.9 million people vacancies, and we're still paying people to be on the dole, should we maybe look at the benefits bill and look at the way benefits are paid, and maybe have an element of compulsion? And maybe there still is. What do you think, Sim?
Yeah, I think the government have a few other things on at the moment, but I'm sure that it's something worth exploring. I think, you know, one of the key areas, and it's something that isn't being addressed, and BP have got behind it regionally, is that upskilling, and it's going to be a challenge across every region. And, you know, IT skills, we've been talking about that's a huge area for development. But for any region to be successful for the future, not only to attract that diaspora of talent back to the region, which I think it was also something you asked, Graham, at the audience, who had worked abroad.
Oh, yes, I did, yes.
To earn, I think, 95% of the
it was extraordinary. I was really blown away by that. I asked 100 people in a room how many people had a career outside the northeast before returning, and virtually every one of them had come back. It was a genuinely extraordinary answer. Okay, so let's just look in general about some of the cost issues and the cost pressures. But the vacancies have got to be dealt with. Training is certainly one way around it. What other ways are there? There could be compulsion, which would be the stick rather than the carrot. What are the carrots? What do you think?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think, as I said before, I think we as business leaders need to take responsibility for trying to engage more with people and invest in that. I mean, I volunteer as an enterprise advisor with a secondary school in North Shields, John Spence, and that's really for me to actually sort of work with the pupils and make them aware of what opportunities lie ahead. But I think also we've got to invest in technology. So we talk about that upskilling, actually putting technology in place to automate some of those more mundane routine activities, administration functions, etc., and then investing in those people to actually upskill them. So that there are opportunities to do things like that as well.
Okay, and Sarah, you've obviously recruited a core team. What's 18, 19 people or something to run it? What's been the bait that you've used to persuade them to come and work with you?
It's just an exciting technology, and of course, when I first arrived there, I had to recruit an entire new team. So I used my persuasive powers to bring them on site to a very, very exciting sort of business, but also looking to scale this internationally. But we also are recruiting right now. Sim's working with us, but we're struggling to recruit people into the business because ultimately, our business will, quadruple in size in relatively short order. So what we've decided to do is look at bringing apprentices into the business. Also 1 year placement, STEM. So we're promoting STEM. It's our nearly a third year, and we've got basically 1 year placements coming in. It's a great opportunity for them because they're working in a small business with lots of exposure to the executive team, including myself. And at the end of that 1 year, we're looking at making an offer to those individuals. So it's sort of creating your own funnel of talent and future-proofing your talent. I think that's necessary. But also, employees have got to be very competitive in regard to sort of salaries and the whole package, because generally, if you find a really good quality candidate, they've probably had 2 or 3 offers alongside yours. So how do you sort of hook them into the business? And it's coming down to packages. So I think you have to, perhaps pay a premium, and you've got to be competitive, but you've got to have a compelling sort of value proposition, really strong culture, and obviously, big vision for the company. People tend to follow.
I think that's absolutely right. I'd subscribe to that. The thing I shouldn't answer my own question, but one thing I've done in the last few weeks, which I think might be interesting, I've recruited more people in our audio-visual side. People who are watching this. There's cameras the other side of the screen and audio-visual. We've been relatively successful, and I've also offered. I went to talk to some of the students who were doing audio-visual at college, and they were explaining they had a couple of days they weren't at college. So I've created, and they've all pitched for this, a specialist 2-day-a-week part-time job for them to come in and apply the skills in a commercial environment, accepting that they will not be the absolute first choice because they're not that experienced yet. But it's been quite interesting to see them coming in and applying for a job in a sort of commercial environment rather than an internship, and it would be paid properly.
Can I just pick on something you mentioned? I think the other point is retaining talent. It's not just about acquiring talent; it's about retaining it. And the point you made about culture and values and shared vision is absolutely critical. In my previous role, we had a pipeline of graduates and apprenticeships coming through, and we used that very successfully. We had some people who stayed with our business for 10, 15 years, coming out of university and then growing into management and leadership positions because we had the right culture, we had the right vision for the company. So retaining talent is equally as important as trying to get new talent on board.
You're certainly right. Yeah. Well, Sim, I've almost left. I'm going to give you last word because we've got a wrap and you've been down the line, so we've been talking around you. What's your last word on retaining talent?
On retaining talent, no, absolutely, I completely agree with that culture. The other thing is, from a regional point of view, what we're seeing is if not retaining it within the company, certainly returning it within the region. And from what we're seeing, not only these large-scale anchor projects, but we're also seeing these more entrepreneurial style of scale-up and scale-out businesses, as Sarah's mentioned. That will attract and retain talent in the region, which is so crucial for the future.
Well, thank you very much, Sim. Thank you, Alistair, and Sarah. Thank you for joining us. There'll be another Business Unmuted the week after Easter. We're taking a 1 week break around Easter, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.